Hello there. Welcome to another day in the garden. We've had a very unsettled week. We've had 3 days of rain followed by these 2 days which are, a little bit sunny, which is great. And I'm looking forward to another 3 days of rain starting tomorrow. So haven't been able to get as much done as I would have liked to have done. But we have managed to do some work out here, and we've managed to do some pruning of shrubs. So let's start by taking a look at some of the things that are in bloom right now, and then I'll show you some of the things that we managed to get accomplished. These are some of my very favorite spring ephemerals. These are Scilla, otherwise known as Siberian squill. The Scilla have naturalized over the years. They're even in the lawn, not just in the perennial bed. And they really are lovely. Let me get a little closer look for you. They're only 4 or 5 inches high. And I have both this very pale blue version, as well as the darker blue. They're only going to last for a few weeks, and the truth is, by the time we're ready to mow the lawn, they'll pretty much have passed. So there's no harm in having them on both sides of the fence. Forsythia are now in bloom. If you saw my winter videos, you know that I actually force forsythia throughout the winter so that I can have them in the house. Here is a lovely patch of hyacinth. I really like this grouping because they're unusual colors. Usually you see hyacinth in white, dark blue, dark pink, but these have got yellows and peach color in amongst them, and I think that they're a little bit different, and I really like that. Now I have a little bit of a fence here. It doesn't do a lot except stop the deer from walking through them. I'd always thought that hyacinth were deer resistant. However, it turns out that the bulb is a little bit toxic, but the leaves and flowers are not. So they have come and nibbled on them, unfortunately. And here above the stone wall is another nice patch of forsythia. I love seeing the new leaves coming out on shrubs. These are gold mound spirea, and you can see that the new leaves coming out do have that signature gold color. And here are some more spirea. These are double play doozy, and their leaves start coming out in a very, very red color. I've mentioned these in videos before because I've been trying to replace my old-fashioned spirea with the ones that are sterile, and this is a sterile variety. This is another variety of spirea called candy corn, and the leaves are coming out in this pretty orangey color. Behind them, you can see that there are bleeding heart starting to pop up, and I have a whole colony of bleeding heart in this area. So this whole area will be completely filled with bleeding heart a little later in the spring. And behind it, we have some Lakothaway and another nice patch of forsythia. The Andromeda are all starting to bloom. This happens to be a variegated version, and it has those beautiful white bellflowers. As I mentioned, we have early, mid, and late blooming daffodils, and it's the early bloomers that we're seeing flower now. And here are some more lovely daffodils. These haven't really lifted their heads yet. Even some of the vines are starting to bloom. This is vinca, and I really enjoy the little blue flower that it has in the springtime. So today I'm going to do some pruning on these hydrangea. The one that's immediately in front of me is Hydrangea macrophylla, or big leaf hydrangea. And the one that is right behind it is a small Hydrangea serrata, or mountain hydrangea. They're very, very similar. They have similar growing zones and they have similar growing habits. You can see when you look at this hydrangea that all of the stems are originating down at the base and then they're coming out in sort of a vase shape. And the stems are very, very straight. Same thing with the Hydrangea serrata. One thing that you really need to know when you're going to go and prune a big leaf hydrangea is that some of the varieties bloom on old wood and some of the varieties bloom on old and new wood. That means that regardless of what kind you have, they've formed flower buds the prior year. The ones that bloom only on old wood, if you cut too much off of them, you're cutting lots and lots of flower buds off. The ones that bloom on old and new, the first thing that blooms are the old wood buds, and then the new wood buds bloom later in the season. So even if you prune them a little too far, you would still get flowers. They would just come quite late. So when we take a look at this hydrangea, it actually has lots of buds from last year. It obviously was not a bad winter. It really fared very, very well, and we have lots of buds going pretty much out to the tips. So what I'm going to look for is, first of all, is there any dead wood on here? And this one got cleaned up quite well last year, so I don't think there's a lot of dead wood. In fact, even the couple that I'm looking at here that I'm thinking the color isn't right, there are some buds on them. So I'm probably not going to prune those. But if you were going to take out the dead wood, you would want to go all the way down to the base of that individual stem and cut it out there. Now you can see that there's some old flower buds on this one from last year, and those you can go in and just snap off at any time. You could have done that last fall if you wanted to. But you can also see that there are some really nice buds here. So all I'm going to do to clean up this hydrangea is I'm going to cut an inch or so above the last bud. You can see there's a nice big bud here. I'm going to cut there as well. Most of this hydrangea is looking really good. In fact, I'm seeing buds right out to the tip of a lot of these branches. So there's not a lot of work required on this one. If we had had a very bad winter and maybe the tips had turned gray and there were no buds at the tip, you might see a bud further down the plant. In that case, you go down to the first healthy looking green bud that you find and cut right above that, just to kind of shape the plant up. You're going to do the same thing on the Hydrangea serrata, which is the one behind me here. And you can see that this one has got a lot of nice buds on it too. Let's put those down. And in this case, all I'm going to do is come in and I'm going to cut off the old flowers right above those last buds. And I'll clean this plant up and it's going to be ready to go. Now these are smaller hydrangea, so I really don't want to cut a whole lot off of them if I can help it. Sometimes you get a hydrangea that is really, really large, and let's take a look at one of those. Now here is a hydrangea that has really gotten big. You can see this hydrangea is nearly as tall as I am, and it has a lot of old flowers on it. This one happened to be a lace cap variety. And I'm looking at it, and even though a lot of these stems, the color is kind of very white on them, they're not really looking dead. Yeah, sometimes if you've got a dead one, if you pull on it, it will actually come out right from the base. And these are all very firm. The only thing that I think that I would recommend doing with this hydrangea is going along the base of it, and where there's a lot of growth coming out at the bottom here, I probably would cut that back more significantly. And then on the top here, I'm noticing that a lot of these branches actually have nice buds right out to the tip. So I don't see any reason to cut those. So the only thing that I would do to this one is take off the old flowers, cut above a nice clean bud, and actually clean up the base of this so that the shape of the hydrangea is improved. All right, here is another Hydrangea macrophylla, and there are several of them here, but this is not shaped as nicely as the other ones that I showed you. They have some issues here. These are ones that had struggled a little bit, and we've got some very long stems and some very short stems, and I really want to shape this up so that the whole thing looks a little better. I am noticing that there are a lot of nice buds on this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose a height on this, and I'm going to leave as many of the buds as possible while at the same time shaping up this hydrangea. So in this case, I have a nice bud here. Now I've cut off a few buds, but there are still some nice buds down below. So I think it's safe to go ahead and get rid of those. This one is a really large one. And even though it has buds on it, there are buds below it. So we'll still get flowers. Same thing with this one. There are still buds all along these stems. So I feel pretty comfortable that I'm still going to have flowers. And even if I'm sacrificing some of the flowers for this year, I'm going to shape up the whole plant by doing this. And it'll be a much happier plant in the end. In fact, I'll take this off. Some of these off. And again, I'm trying to just come up with a height that I'm happy with. I mean, this is kind of a crazy branch here, but you can see that there were branches off the side with buds. So I'm going to take that whole thing right off. Oh, it's stuck in the honeysuckle. Ooh, that's something not good.
Did you get permission from the deer to reduce their food supply?
Yeah, the deer do like these, unfortunately. So I have to use deer spray, and little fences and all kinds of things to stop them. But yeah, they will nibble on these for sure. Let's see. All right. So you can see that we've decreased the size of the hydrangea. We've actually given it a much better shape. And I think because we've left lots and lots of buds still on it, we still should have plenty of flowers this year. So don't be afraid to do some pruning, just don't go too far. So here's a hydrangea macrophylla that I have to be very, very careful about when I'm pruning it. This is a Nico Blue. And Nico Blue hydrangeas only bloom on old wood. So the only place you're going to see blooms are those live stems that you're seeing buds on right now. So when I prune this one, I want to retain as many of the flower buds as possible. And they get very heavy. You can see that there's actually a stake here from last year because those flowers got so heavy they were pulling the plant down and I ended up staking it. So I'll pull those out right now too. All right, so on this hydrangea, what I'm going to do is look for green buds and I'm going to cut above those green buds. And on some of the branches, the buds are going all the way out to the tips. Some they're not. Here's one where you have an old flower on here, but there's absolutely nothing on this branch, so no value added. We can cut that right off. There we go. And again, looking for those green buds and cutting above it. Now here's one. There's a tiny bit of green bud here, but this one kind of goes out at a weird angle, so I'm going to take it off anyway. But I'm not actually damaging anything in that case. If you have something that just doesn't look right or it's in the way of other things, it's hitting your house, it's hitting other shrubs, by all means go in and do some clipping on it. Because this hydrangea only blooms on old wood, you want to maintain as much of that old wood as you possibly can, and that will get you the maximum flower power for the year. You cut off too much, and you've definitely cut off flowers for the year. Now here's a branch that really there's nothing else on, so I'm going to take it right off. You can see down here too. And this one, there's one little bud there, but truthfully, this is going in a weird angle, so I'm going to take it off. Once again, shaping it up a little bit as I go, but trying to maintain as much of the old wood as I possibly can. So I hope you enjoyed today's walk around the garden, and I hope you learned something about pruning shrubs and pruning hydrangeas. This is part 1, and I will be getting to the other varieties in part 2. So I'll see you again next time, and thank you for joining me today.